Hi everyone, today I want to bring you my guide for the Razor Wings Spiritborn. This is a kind of off-meta build, but it's a ton of fun and it still works really well. As you can see, I'm flying through those pit 70s, and this is actually relatively old footage from earlier in the season before it got buffed again. So now I think like a really well-geared character can definitely go for like sub 2 minutes, 75 plus pits, destroy everything in Torment 4, including the lair bosses, and just have an absolute blast. So I want to show you what I've done here. We also have a macro guide on our site, the way I can check out all of the written details about it by Chronix. I originally took his build as the base for what I was doing and then started modifying it. And by now he has actually updated it to something very similar to what I was doing here. The idea behind this build is that you throw these Razor Wings, which is actually a cooldown skill with charges. As you can see here, I'll right click, it has like a little number there, which is the number of users that you have available. But we can reset those charges constantly thanks to the Intricacy passive. And we reset our other skills with Prodigy's Tempo key passive. So we're kind of just spamming Razor Wings all the time. All of our cooldowns come back frequently. And then whenever we press the Hunter, which is our ultimate, we reset our Razor Wings and we can just kind of keep the cycle going forever. And it turns out that this actually has quite a lot of damage. On top of that, you also have permanent 100% dodge, so you are actually very well protected. This is because of the deflection aspect which goes on our pants, and this is part of the Razor Wings combo. So the idea is that you keep counterattack up all the time, and then whenever Razor Wings fly out and then return to you like a boomerang, they will fly out again as long as your counterattack is going. So you try to keep up your counterattack all the time, and then those Razor Wings that fly out automatically will actually deal extra damage and they will seek out targets. So you constantly have this like bouncing back and forth going on, even when you're not really attacking very much. And like this, you kind of carry forward the damage through the pit and through whatever runs you're doing. Everything around you just kind of gets automatically deleted, and it feels really fun. It is worth noting that because of this whole like cooldown interaction, it is a little bit finicky, but once you get the muscle memory down, it is totally fine to play and a very smooth farming build, even though you have to worry about those cooldowns a little bit. But other than that, you don't really have any resource issues, for example, and compared to like Kapaleka builds, you also don't really have to worry about setting up a resource generation in a special way or these kind of things. Once you get the Razor Wings charges going, you can start blasting with this build, and it just feels pretty fun. So let's dive into it. Here's my planner. I already explained a few of the main mechanics, like the deflection aspect. One important item that we also want to use here is the Sunstained War Crozier. This is a potency skill buff item that we also get a few other benefits from. So we get all of the upgrades from the focus skills. So what are these? Well, this is the Vortex, and this is the Soar if you have that, and it's the Ravager. So these are the focus skills here. So you don't actually have to put any points in there because you get the ranks here, and then we get all the upgrades for free. And this actually allows us to use these skills, get a bunch of benefits, and still have points left over for other stuff, because this build is actually pretty tight on all the things that you want to take. So this is kind of important. And this item also gives you like a ramping damage buff. So when you start a run, you have to actually use 10 skills. So you want to try to kind of like, press your Ravager, and you want to do the Vortex really soon as you start, and then do that a few more times so that you ramp up this buff. But other than that, you kind of keep it up easily anyway, because you have a timer of 8 seconds. So just every 8 seconds you need to press one of these skills at some point. Just the first like 10 seconds of the run, you are a little bit on the weaker side. There are a bunch of very strong offensive aspects that we have. So redirected force, this is a classic for Spiritborn, lots of crit damage. We want to make sure that we have permanent armored hide uptime, which gives us 100% block chance. And thanks to the Prodigy's Tempo resets, this is easily doable. So we have a pretty big buff here. We can't really benefit from the doubled buff, but even without that, this is like a very powerful aspect, so we include that here. Then you have Unyielding Hits, also a classic, so you stack a lot of armor. With a maxed out aspect, you want to get to 5,000 armor. So this is mostly done with a % armor roll on the neck, and then like some other like armor flat rolls, like here on the pants and the boots, and then maybe an instance or something like that. And we also have the Heraldic Jewels that give us armor here. So we want to try to get as close as possible to the 5k because of Unyielding Hits. And then we have two Razor Wing specific aspects. So here we have Razor Wings as an incarnate skill. First of all, you get perma unhindered, which is kind of nice, so you can just walk through enemies. It also gives you like a bit of a passive benefit with some like unrestrained power here, so you don't have to worry about this, but usually we should have it either way. And we have also more damage for our potency skills, which is Razor Wings. This is a potency skill per active Razor Wing. You can have 15 of those out, so 2.5 times 15 is quite a bit of a damage buff here. And then we have Endless Talents. This is another Razor Wings aspect where you get up to 50% buff. Razor Wings itself also has a bunch of little perks. So for example, it just makes enemies vulnerable when you crit or when you hit from behind. So you shoot them out and they come back. They can hit them from behind basically, even if the monster looks at you. But we generally aim for 100% crit chance. So the first hit will always make stuff vulnerable in the last 5 seconds. So it is like a very consistent uptime. And you can also get charges back here when hitting an enemy, or even like 20% chance when you have a barrier up. So we try to keep our barriers. And this is done thanks to Gorilla Hall, and we also have the auspicious passive here. So these are kind of like the two main sources of barrier, and like this you should generally be protected and get this benefit. Now for the mythics, I have an Air of Perdition here. This is a very strong damage buff. Other builds also run, for example, Harmony. I have that in the Ancestral version here, so Harmony is also very powerful to get started, but it has the downside, it doesn't come with a lot of extra crit, unfortunately. So this crit really helps us to cap out at 100%, and it's otherwise basically impossible to get there. So you want to try to get this one, get a lot of crit on this, even though the other stats don't really do much. We also have the 60% bonus. And then we have Shroud of False Death, which is just a powerful item in basically any build, including this one. We have lots of passives to benefit from. There's a pretty strong buff here. Our rune combo is kind of interesting on this build. So we have Yule Quacks. Quacks is a 100% damage buff when you activate it, has a 1 second cooldown, and you need 8 casts, effectively 8 Razor Wings in order to activate it. Other than that, basically every single skill you have on your bar is a cooldown, so this also helps whenever you do like your kind of face roll combo of pressing the hunter and then pressing your counter attack and your armored hide and so on. You kind of just usually press everything at once, and otherwise spam Razor Wings. And since we do that like 3-4 times per second, we actually keep our Quacks rune up like almost half the time or so. So this has very high uptime, is a very strong damage buff. However, early on, you probably want to go with the Gar rune, because without the Perdition, you just don't get close to 100% crit, and this helps us out to cap out the crit a little bit. And then we have the second rune combo, which is Seer Vex. So this is +3 to all skills, and we don't actually have a lot of skill ranks here on our Razor Wings. You only have the base plus the base 5 ranks, and then we get +3 from the Vex. So those 3 ranks are pretty impactful, but they also help with the Prodigy's tempo resets, because the more ranks you have in all of your skills, the faster you reset them with this key passive. So this is also, for example, why we have like a kind of like a seemingly random amount of points in each of those skills. As you can see, we have 4 in the hunter, we have 3 in the counter attack, and so on. And in that case, we get even more ranks and reset them even faster. And this can produce as a cycle where you just need like 1 fewer reset when you have those extra ranks. So Vex Rune has pretty great value here. As for our Spirit Hall combo, there is no bug abuse, Jaguar Hall stuff going on here. This is Gorilla. So we get the barriers. We don't care really about the thorns, but it can help here to, for example, use a different glyph. If you use like the range glyph, although we probably don't really want to go for that. But if you have that level, for example, you could do it early on. But more importantly, we get the barriers and we activate our unyielding hits easily, because otherwise you would have to press Armored Hide every 3 seconds, which is possible, but relatively inconvenient to always rely on that. So the Gorilla Hall does a good job here. And we have the secondary Gorilla Hall for more maximum resolve and perma unstoppable. This is mostly a very comfy choice. You can do Jaguar. In fact, the Ancestor variant here does run the Jaguar for the +1 ferocity. So we get a little bit more value from, for example, something like Furnace, and we have more attack speed. But the 2 resolve stacks here are also granting us some value thanks to the Colossal Glyph. So having more resolve doesn't hurt. The Paragon is relatively straightforward. This is also relatively classic. So we have Convergence. We want to try to stack a bunch of the different elemental bonuses which you already have on the board. And we also have, for example, Fulminate Glyph here. So this also gives us extra lightning damage. That is, you can max this out pretty soon. Viscous Shield, we have a lot of barriers as a big damage buff. We have sapping. This also just kind of passively activates. You don't really have to think about it. Gives you vigor back, which fuels the Quax rune, for example. But we also do that with the reactive ooze here, just to kind of have the backup of being able to proc it all the time, and we always go back to full resource in between, basically. And lastly, we have the drive board here. So this is kind of a novelty for Spiritborn standards, but it is actually fitting into this build really well because this is a ranged playstyle. You can actually keep this up very easily, and compared to the past, they made it so that all the stacks refresh their timer now. So you just need to move 10 meters every 10 seconds, which is roughly 2/3 of a screen or so from left to right. So you can do it pretty easily, even in a boss fight, for example, when you just use a hunter and go from left side to right side and then, you know, jump back and forth sometimes. And this is about it. You can also use evade because we have acceleration. So every time you evade, you get an extra damage buff for 3 seconds for all of your eagle skills, including razor wings. So you want to try, especially while clearing, to kind of use evade frequently. So you want to have like evade charges or attacks reduce evade cooldown, and like this you can kind of frequently do that and keep up this buff here. And like this you actually move forward relatively well with the hunter and evading. One last important note about the skill tree is the intricacy passive. I mentioned this in the intro. This is kind of the key in order to play this build, and you have to make sure that you use this properly. So first of all, with the Shroud of False Death, you get 1 point in this for free. You don't have to invest, but without that, you have to put the point there. And the way that this works is that when you press the hunter, you will reset and get a free cast of the last used potency, defensive, or focus skill. Well, everything on your bar besides the hunter is one of those categories. So the idea is that you use Razor Wings as the last skill before pressing the hunter. And then you get a free reset of the Razor Wings. And for some reason, this is how it works. You get 9 charges back. And this is enough to then fuel your Prodigy's tempo and reset your hunter and all of your other skills again. So you need to make sure that you kind of just like spam Razor Wings all the time and then use the hunter as the follow-up skill to a Razor Wings cast. Make sure that you don't accidentally like press Armored Hide and then instantly hunter. So the way that I usually played this was that I just spam Razor Wings all the time, press the hunter first, like consciously, and then after the hunter is done, or while you're flying, you know, with the hunter, you press all of the other skills. So then I press my counterattack, I press my Ravager, I press my Armored Hide or something like that. And then while I'm standing there in the next position, after jumping with the hunter, I would just spam Razor Wings again and then repeat the cycle. There's also another mechanic involved here, which is that when you have more cooldown reduction on your stats or on a specific skill, then you also get more charges back. So in particular with Razor Wings, this is the main reason why we have the gem here for the catalytic skill gains 25% cooldown reduction. So we put catalytic skill on our Razor Wings here, and like this, Razor Wings has extra cooldown reduction. And even though we don't really want to wait for the charges to come back, having more cooldown reduction on it gives you more charges from intricacy. So I believe it goes from 9 to 11 or from 9 to 12. Just thanks to this gem. And this again also smooths out the playstyle a bit and gives you more leeway. And that also pretty much explains the build. There is this bossing variant here that I've made where I don't have the Sunstained, and instead I put like a two-handed redirected force, and I like change a few of the aspects around, and we basically just add vehement brawlers. The main reason for this is that when you are doing lair bosses, you have a lot of downtime and you have to open the chest and so on. And this Sunstained buff just kind of drops very easily. It only lasts 8 seconds, and you don't really want to just like spam your skills all the time. So I noticed that this was a bit of an annoying thing to do, and I made this version here where you basically have to swap one item and make another quarter stuff. But this turns out to be kind of comparable in damage. It's like roughly a quarter less damage, but there's still plenty once you're decked out to take down the lair bosses in seconds, and you don't have to worry about stacking the Sunstained. So if you're doing a lot of lair bosses, you might want to look into this. And that also concludes this build guide here. So check it out if you want. We also have the written guide, as I mentioned here, from Chronix. So there's a lot more details in there as well, and you can read up on a bunch of extra knowledge that might help you. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed this guide. I had a ton of fun with Razor Wings, so can recommend, and I'll see you guys next time.